Welcome to the Pathless Travel Podcast. This week we feature Nate Zolman of Zolman's Best One Tire and Auto Care. Nate, thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I want to kick this thing off with a question. I mean, you've been in this community for decades. Your family's been in this community for decades. People know you. I'm sure you've got an extensive network. What's one thing people don't know about you?
My wife, Tabitha, on my 50th birthday 5 years ago, she got me parachute jumping tickets, and she and I jumped out of a airplane in Michigan City, and it was phenomenal.
Had you done anything like that before?
Never. Nope, it was just on the list.
On the list?
Yep.
Your list or her list?
My list. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm a scuba diver. She won't, diving with sharks and whales and stuff like that. I like doing that stuff too, and she allows me.
Yeah, you enjoy the great outdoors. Where does that come from?
You know what? I don't know. I think I've always appreciated nature, and I've mowed lawns my entire life, and I think I just like land and being outdoors, and from hiking and bicycling and just exploring and just anything outdoors. My wife and I like to do kayak, boat, walk, nature trails. We're not enthusiasts. We don't have backpacks and go camping and anything like that.
Right.
But we'll walk for 10 hours. If we're on a vacation, just go exploring, and all the time we're tired, eat something, drink something, and walk back, and go back to a hotel room.
Well, if you had a vacation that you could pick wherever you could go, and do whatever you wanted to do, where would that be, and what would you do?
Well, my wife and I travel a lot. We're really, really blessed on that. So we've been fortunate to go many places. We just got back from Yellowstone National Park. Absolutely unbelievable. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Yellowstone, the wilderness, the wildlife, elk, buffalo, bear, deer, antelope, the views, everywhere you turn is a postcard. I mean, it's just amazing. So if you like the outdoors, anything, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Montana, it's just, they call it big sky country for a reason. It's beyond beautiful.
Well, you've been with the company since 1992 officially,
yes,
right? I mean,
correct.
You grew up in the business.
Yeah.
Business started around 1978. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
So tell us about Zolman's Best One Tire and Auto Care.
Well, I'm going to go back to 1963 first. My dad was a local mechanic in Warsaw, Indiana. His father died when he was 14, so he was that junkyard dog that worked at the auto repair, worked at the salvage yard, pieced things together because he couldn't afford anything, and became everyone's friend. Everyone called him Buddy.
Okay.
His real name was Vernon. Who wants to be called Vernon, And then as he got older, it became Bud. He started working for corporate Firestone in 1963.
Okay.
And his boss was a very smart, nice college guy from Minnesota named Ray Monteith Tire. And so for 3 years, Ray was a district manager in charge of 3 or 4 states. Hey, Bud, go to Indianapolis, fix the store. Bud, go to Evansville, fix the store. Go to Fort Wayne, go to Crawfordsville, go to Bloomington. And after 3 years, about every 6 months being a nomad with my mom and dad being married, my mom was pregnant with first child, my sister Steph. Mrs. Monteith, Janet Monteith, was pregnant with baby number 2, and the wives said, we're not nomads. Pick a town and plant roots.
Oh, wow.
And so with Ray's networking skills of corporate America, they decided on going to my dad's hometown of Warsaw. My dad had all the street cred. The largest customer of Firestone at the time was a gas station owner by the name of Paul Zerker, who's the founder of our Best One group, and he was the largest Firestone farm ag dealer in the country.
Yeah, wow.
Working out of Little Monroe, Indiana. And so Ray and Paul started a corporation called Monteith Tire. My dad had no money. He was a local, good guy, and they were kind enough to let my dad earn stock equity into Monteith Tire. And then in 1978, this location in Mishawaka became available. They called Ray and said, hey, we got a distressed situation up in Mishawaka. Does Bud Zolman still work for you? Yep. Can you send him up and tell us how bad it is? Sure. So my dad came up, and it was really, really bad financially. And so they decided to take on the challenge. My dad sold the stock back to Ray and Paul. They became partners with my dad and helped him get started. And so 23% interest, it was 21% interest rate, 2% over prime, because my dad was a first-time business owner, so he's considered high risk. And then 6 months after he owned it, Firestone had their first Firestone recall. And so every single tire my dad prepaid for to get anticipation discount so he could make another 4% gross profit on the tire, he had to give away for free to the consumer on the recall, do paperwork, physically send the tires back to Firestone. They inspect them on the serial number. They agree the paperwork matches the tire. Then they mail a check 60 to 90 days later. So it took my dad about 3 years to dig out of that financial hole. And Paul Zerker, Ray Monteith, and our local banker every Friday on the phone, and the banker came in person and just helped my dad work through the timing couldn't have been worse. Just the timing couldn't have been. If it wasn't for Ray, if it wasn't for Paul, it wasn't for the bank, it wasn't for my dad's just grit, he wouldn't have gotten through that 3 years. But after that, we've been blessed.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
And then 1992, I graduated from college, and I always worked in the business, from changing tires, changing oil. Found out quickly after rebuilding an engine with my dad that I did not want to be a mechanic. I'm mechanically inclined. I like the industry. I just don't like someone breathing over my neck. Is it done yet? Is it done yet? But, I understand being around it my whole life and just enjoyed it, and, always asked questions. And then Dad didn't want to grow the business, and I did. And so my dad was kind of my safety net. Well, you can do it. I don't want to. So in 95, I did Granger with my dad's blessing and safety net, and we were blessed. And then did 2 in 97, and did Niles in 99, and South Bend in 2004, and the Fleet new division in 2007. And so here we are. We're blessed with 8 retail locations and 4 commercial truck tire centers and 170 employees.
Jeez.
So we've been blessed. The community's been very, very good to us.
Well, you've talked about your dad a lot. What were some things that you took away from that relationship, or you have taken away from it, that are a big part of your DNA?
I'll get choked up. That's my dad. I have a big picture of my father sitting behind my desk, and he's always looking over my shoulder. My dad, I could talk for hours about my relationship with my dad. He pretty much said, all you got in this world is your name. Don't ever dishonor it, and do the right thing. Don't tell a lie. It's so much easier to tell the truth and get it over with and remember what lie you told. And so I was just blessed to have very, very good parents, and they had nothing, and they, honor your word and do the right thing, and you'll make a decent living.
Thanks for sharing that. So what makes this place unique, other than what has been the foundation of it, right? And its rich history. And what else is unique about this place?
Well, if you can't tell by now, I'm a very relationship person. I truly care about people, and yes, the corporation has to make money, but I like being Santa Claus. I want to watch this person develop from this to here to here. We all were the superstars at what we did. And that now it's kind of fun being the coach or the mentor, watching these other people fulfill their dreams and give them the tools and the opportunity and the resources. So people say this all the time, but we are a family business. And I think there's a core minimum 50%, maybe maximum 80% that truly, I mean, it's our family. You know, you're spending 8 to 12 hours a day at work, depending on the situation. And you have to trust, and get along with the people. And if I have their back, they got my back. And if I throw them under the bus, they're not going to be loyal, vice versa. And that's just an earned relationship, earned trust over time. And when, at the moment of truth, you know, the decision I make or how I respond to something will set a domino effect, good or bad. Mm-hmm. And I think that from my mom and dad to me, to how I now handle situations. And you met Tony, my vice president. He's amazing, military vet. And I just think family owned, locally owned and operated, and truly we care about each other. The bulk core people that want to be committed, they really care about the customer, care about the business, care about each other. And, you know, I always say family first. Someone's kid gets injured, you know, they're out of vacation time, they're out of, you know, paid time off. HR doesn't like me saying this. Hey, you won't miss a paycheck. Go take care of your kid, you know, and there's legal ramifications to that. But the right thing to do is take care of the family. So we always say family first, and HR doesn't always like that.
So those are some things that Stephen Covey talks about in one of his books. It's called Speed of Trust, and when trust is high, you can get to solutions much quicker.
Absolutely.
You've now touched on a few ways that you've built trust. Anything else that you guys do here that you're intentional about building and fostering that family environment, just the culture that you have here?
So two things. On our commercial fleet side, they always have a morning huddle. And it's just pretty much, you know, here's what we did well yesterday. Here's what, you know, pitfalls that we occurred. What can we do better? So those quick debriefings, huddle, those work really well on the commercial side. But as far as relationship building, we like to do experiences. Yeah, money's nice, bonuses are nice, and they're properly compensated for our industry. But send them on vacations, send them on cruises. Took some long-term commercial employees, took some long-term retail employees, took them fishing, Lake Michigan, drank beer, had food, just hung out from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and just thanked them for their longevity and those type of things. Send them up, you know, to a log cabin and let them go fishing and hunting or camping, you know, our expense. Just went blank. South Bend Cubs. We always do employee appreciation, you know, 150 people upstairs and just costume parties. So we like to celebrate victories.
Well, you clearly invest in your people. You invest in the community too here.
Yeah.
I've seen some things, whether it be primarily investing in the next generation. It seems like it's important here. Why is that?
So, you know, once again, I might get choked up. My mom and dad literally came from nothing. I mean, nothing. And we've been blessed. And they always said it's our responsibility and it's our right and it's our honor and privilege to help. And so I've always enjoyed being around kids. Kids are the future. It sounds corny, but it's true. And they're more susceptible to a positive or negative influence. And so anything that's kid related, we really, really believe in and try to do things. We started our Zolman Tire scholarship, and supposed to be 6 scholarships, and every year somehow it's 10 or 11, And it just, we get 300 applications every year, and if we could give away $300,000 a year in scholarships, if we financially could do that, we would. It's just amazing how kids can communicate their thoughts and their passions on paper, and you can feel it coming through the paper, and 2 or 3 page. So we're just very, very intentional about anything youth or student related. That's kind of our soft spot.
I kind of want to shift the focus here to you. And what's great is I have the opportunity to sit across the table from business leaders and hear their story. Yeah. And more times than not, it's always about others. It's always about serving others. It's always about people. And the reason why I got into this is because I wanted for you to tell your personal story a little bit too, because you always just want to give the credit, and that's a great way. I mean, that's an incredible attribute of a leader. But my question is, when you think about, the title of the podcast is The Path Less Traveled, and you think about your journey, and yes, you've mentioned vacations. Yes, you've mentioned the fun things you get to do in the community. But talk to us about your path and how maybe you can relate to being less traveled.
So, integrity, honesty, doing the right thing was just embedded into me, because that's all my parents had. They had no resources, and so that's just how us kids were brought up. And if you want something, go work for it. Okay. And so I started mowing lawns. I wanted a bicycle. Great. How many lawns you need to mow to earn enough money to go buy the bicycle? Well, you gave my sisters the bikes. That's not your program. Okay. Bought a jam box, bought my own car, paid for my own college. And it was never a punishment. It's just, I want something, go do it. Okay. And I always knew that was the greatest gift my dad could give me, was learning how to fish on your own. And so I'm trying to teach that to my kids, try to teach that to our employees and that. But it's just how I was hardwired, how I was raised, and now it's just normal to me. It might be abnormal or not popular or common, but that's just how I'm hardwired.
Yeah, let's put yourself at in a frame of mind of being a younger you, a younger Nate, fresh out of college. You just graduated from Ball State.
Yep.
What advice would you give to that young man right now?
Well, if my parents were here, they might say my version isn't as accurate as I think it is. So, I was always driven. I had no problem wanting to outwork anyone. I knew I was a low person on the totem pole. I knew I was mommy and daddy's kid. And what I didn't know, and I guess the shortest story I can give you is, for 2 years, he had 2 long-term twin brothers, Tim and Terry Gilvin, both of them 20-some years with my dad, just great guys. They were my dad's right hand, they were wonderful for our business. But man, they were just relentless. I mean, they were vicious to me. They'd set me up, for failure. They would intentionally leave information out, and I'm biting my cheek, I'm being respectful, and I'm maneuvering, and then finally, after 2 years, I've done this for 2 years, I know what I am, I know I'm good at this, and finally, it was about 5:30 in the morning, we're here early in our industry, and man, it was me and Terry and my dad. And I started saying inappropriate words and saying, I'm tired of it, Dad. me or him, pick right now. My dad threw me against the wall, poked me in the chest. Don't ever, ever, ever give me an ultimatum, and don't ever talk to me or anyone like that again. Now, what's the issue here? And I just went off and just gave him the list of everything that Terry and Tim's been relentless for 2 years on me. Wow. And Terry just smoking his pipe, smirking, drinking his cup of coffee, just watching me vent, not even phased. And I'm ready to go fists with him, and I'm always respectful, especially to elders and superiors. And probably 10 minutes of me venting, and my dad goes, "Well, Terry?" He goes, "Yeah, I think so." And Terry put his hand out, patted me on the shoulder, put his hand out, said, "You've earned your stripes. You're an equal." And my dad just started smirking. I said, "You put him up to that?" "Yep." And then Terry's like, "I can't believe you put up with it for so long."
No way.
Yep. Yep.
So, what were your words to your father at that point?
I understood what he was doing.
Wow.
Seeing what I would tolerate, seeing my breaking point, watching me figure out how to survive, how to respond to difficult situations, not blaming others, taking accountability, just the whole thing. And if you knew my dad, you would understand it after the fact, but no one had any idea that was what was going on until you're like, "Well, Terry?" And he did everything intentional, and there's always a long-term lesson to it,
wow.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that was a very hard conversation, I'm sure, in that time, in that moment. Over your years, you've had hard conversations, difficult conversations with employees.
Yeah.
How do you approach a hard conversation, and do you have a framework for it?
Yes. You met Tony, my vice president. Tony comes from 11 years of military service in the Army, as he told you. So Tony's very, very direct. He's very, very respectful. He's very, very matter of fact. And it's just clear and concise, like you would expect military training. And it's amazing. No one's ever offended by his direct approach, because that's how he has been trained. That's how he leads. I'm the other way. I'm a little softer. I'm a little more relationship. I'm a little more, try to be more diplomacy to it. And he's like, just be direct. And I'm like, we got to treat him with respect. We always treat him with respect.
Right.
And so I try to let people know, I do care about you. Your wins are my wins. Your losses are my losses. So when you screw up or when we fail, it's my failure as much as yours. So let's talk through this. And Tony's like, "Hey, this expectation, this is your shortcoming. How and why did we get here? What do you think the solutions are? What training, what resources you need to fix it?" And then he'll literally have an army of people retrain. "Okay, are you trained?" "Yes." "So this isn't going to happen again." "Yep." "Okay." Then move on. And I think there's a balance between my far soft approach and his very, very, very direct. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as employees know you truly care about them as a person,
right.
I don't want to fire you. I don't want transfer. I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want to harm you. I don't want to hurt your self-esteem or your ego, but still you're missing in this area. These other areas you're doing great, but you're missing this. And so I think with Tony and I discussing it, and with the managers, we have a pretty good feel on what approach we need to take with certain situations and certain people. And the bigger we get, the more complicated it gets, And because of HR, and you set a precedence, and you can't favor one person or the other, so your styles have to be consistent.
Yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time on the HR side, and when we were smaller, it was just a relationship conversation.
Yeah.
But now and so there's a lot more due diligence just because of our size.
Yeah. Yeah, you clear as kind comes to mind.
Yeah.
Clear as kind.
Yeah.
A couple of questions really digging into who you are and kind of what you're about. If you were to think about what matters most in life, how would you answer that?
Family, 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 family. Relationships, honor, integrity, patriotism. Just literally, I'm blessed to live the American dream, and I think if you do the right thing and you have the opportunity and you appreciate the opportunity, then it's your responsibility, obligation to try to help others get that same level. Mm-hmm. So, but family and relationships and reputation is probably the 3 words I would answer that.
I would imagine the answer to this question could be a whole host of things, but I'm going to have you narrow it down to one if you can.
Yeah.
You've achieved a lot. What's one thing you're most proud of?
My family. Sorry. Yep. My kids, my wife, my parents, my sisters, my family. And that also goes to my very, very close employee family too. So.
Yeah, it was really, really touching before we even got rolling here. You just your posture and your energy it just went through the roof when you start talking about your kids.
Yeah.
And the great things that they're currently doing and how they're just navigating life. So
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Couple of final questions for you.
Yeah.
I believe most people are 1 or 2 steps away from a breakthrough and they end up quitting.
Yep.
And whether that be your generation, a younger generation, I think it relates to every generation. But people end up quitting. You haven't.
Yeah.
And you don't. And you don't. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think I answered that a little bit earlier. Literally, I was a competitive swimmer my whole life from age 5 through college, Division I at Ball State. My dad was a giant at 5'10". My uncle's 5'7". My mom's was 5 foot on a good day, and my dad and I was always the shortest kid, still am. And he said, "Son, you're never going to be the tallest. You're never going to be the fastest. You're never going to be the smartest. You're never going to be the richest. All you can control is your commitment, your discipline, your work